every time I read Jung, it's like reading Nietzsche. It's terrifying because, you know, he's so damn smart that he can think up answers to questions that you don't even, it's not like you don't understand the answers. It's that you never conceptualized the damn questions. It's really something to read someone like that, right, who says, well, here's a mystery, and you think, wow, I never thought of that as a mystery, and here's the solution. It's like, okay, that's...
If you're studying psychology, you'll find very few figures as mystical and as mythological as Carl Jung. However, some would say that a lot of parts of his theories are, let's just say, not very suited for scholarly consumptions. It deals with matters most people would regard as superstitious, occult, and non-scientific. For example, a part of his theory involves facing your own shadow, which is a symbol of our dark side, which we must realize in order to achieve spiritual enlightenment in what he calls individuation. To me, that sounds more like a meditating guide instead of scientific concept. The guy was very interested in mythology though, so this doesn't exactly come as a surprise. Jung would spend years of his life studying what fantasies and mythologies mean for us living in today's society. In his quest of trying to merge biology of scientific nature and the psyche, that's the soul, of spiritual nature, he came up with his own theory of personality called analytical psychology. This theory believes that we are motivated by partly conscious and unconscious motivations. Okay, nothing new there. Yet the most notable thing that separates Jung's theory was his concept of the collective unconscious. No, not that kind of collective. So Jung believes that our actions, thoughts, dreams, fantasies are partly influenced by traces of knowledge and tendencies that come from our ancestors. These innate knowledge and tendencies are universal in the sense that everybody has them and are influenced by them. So, for example, during middle school, when your crush walks by and your jeans start getting too tight in the nether regions, even though you barely know her and have never fully understood the concept of love, that's the collective unconscious at work. In this case, it is an innate tendency that your body feels and recognizes without ever being thought by another person. Jung would say that there are certain impressions that came from your male ancestors' experiences with women that attract them toward this image of a woman and, to another extent, attracting you to your crush. It is a fairly abstract concept that's quite complicated and can't really be proven easily. That's true. But I hope you get the gist of it. Now, when these tendencies are repeated throughout lifetimes and cycles of human generations, they might become developed enough to have an identity of their own. Now, this is what Jung would come to mention as archetypes. Archetypes cannot have a direct representation. They appear mainly in dreams and fantasies or as mythological images. You might even find archetypal symbolisms in pop culture, such as Star Wars, The Lion King, or Harry Potter. You're probably very lost right now, and that's fine. It is somewhat convoluted, but bear with me, alright? Examples of the archetypes are the persona, the shadow, the wise old man, the divine child, the trickster, the hero, and the self. Alright, I know what you're thinking, and no, they're not part of the latest installment of a JRPG franchise, despite what they sound like. To understand them a bit more, we're gonna take a look at some of the archetypes I've mentioned before. Namely the persona, the shadow, the anima and animus, and the self. The persona can be thought of as a manifestation of your role in society. What we put up front for the world to see is our persona. For example, a medical doctor might have the tendencies to be caring and compassionate toward his patients, but he might be very strict and responsible to his 2 daughters at home. This is because of his persona as a doctor and as a father, according to society's expectations of the respective images of a doctor or a father. The persona archetype exists in order to meet society's demands. Okay, that's all good and everything, but you must always be careful to not mistake your persona for who you really are. Over-identifying with your persona would mean that you become dependent on society, and a little look at our social media just further proves how bad that could be.
Little Tay out here balling in the eye.
Right, here, no rat comes into my house without getting tased.
Jung thinks in order to be mentally healthy, we must be somewhere in the middle. So we fulfill society's expectations by projecting our persona, yet stay true to who we truly are and don't lose ourselves in the roles that society has placed upon us. Now, acting as the antithesis to the persona is the shadow archetype. This archetype symbolizes darkness and repression. It is the part of ourselves that we are usually not aware of, the ones that are somewhat morally questionable. It is part of yourself that you don't identify with, one that you reject. However, it is important to note that in order to become fully whole, you should get to know your shadow. Because even though the archetype might seem stereotypically evil, the archetype reveals crucial truth about you. Think of it as accepting your flaws and bad sides that you always deny. In pop culture, it is usually represented as the antagonist, like Saruman from Lord of the Rings, Tyler Durden from Fight Club, or Lord Voldemort from Harry Potter. Of particular interest though, for the video game franchise Persona, the main characters are faced with darker versions of themselves, one that is seemingly the opposite of what they think they are. However, it later becomes clear that those versions of themselves are part of them as well. It wasn't until they have acknowledged that and accepted can they finally overcome it. Jung called this the first test of courage, signifying the beginning of one's quest for true self. Moving on, we've got the anima and the animus. Jung had this belief that nobody is ever only one thing. He believed that if you're good, then you're also evil. If you're straight, then you're also a raging homosexual. You get the point. So, following this train of thought, every guy would have a feminine side to them, and every girl a masculine one. These sides are represented by the anima and the animus. Anima being the feminine side males possess, and animus its counterpart. Jung proceeds to explain that, just like the shadow, we have to accept this concept and get in touch with our feminine or masculine side to be whole. Just to be clear though, this has nothing to do with gender dysphoria. To put it simply, an example would be embracing your compassionate and nurturing side, which are generally perceived to be feminine traits as a male, or to foster independence, which is, masculine for female. Jung called this the second test of courage, because he thought that coming to terms with this concept requires greater courage than to accept the shadow, which is, really saying something about the grip society has upon us. So all this talk about tests of courage probably got you wondering, just what are those tests for? What's at the end of the tunnel? Well, Jung conceptualized the most important archetype of all, the archetype of archetypes, the self-archetype. This is how Jung symbolized the self. This is called the mandala, and it is a symbol of growth and perfection. You can see every other archetype we've talked about there. That's because the self-archetype unites all the other archetypes into one whole, a process Jung calls self-realization. Now, this is just a concept, because Jung believes that it would be an extremely difficult thing to have perfect balance between all four archetypes in order to achieve the true self. Yet it remains that everyone has the same concept of an idealized, perfect self that we should all strive for. So there you have it, a looking glass through some of the essential archetypes proposed by Jung. Starting as a student of Freud, he went off on his own and formulated his own theory. He might not be the most scientific psychologist out there, but his concepts have certainly been able to obtain merit from the world. The fact that the fake concepts Jung proposed isn't really able to be disproven or proven serve as a reminder of how much we just still don't know about our own selves. That's my take on the brief overview of Jungian psychology. If this interests you and you'd like to learn more about Jung, then I suggest you read Portable Jung, edited by Joseph Campbell. It works well as an introductory book for Jungian school of thought before you get on the actual heavy stuff of his collected works. Subscribe if you want more psychology, fiction, and pop culture. If there's anything you have in mind that you would like me to talk about, feel free to leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.